Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Winfrey, and what you're about to listen to is a re-airing of an old episode of Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. This particular episode originally aired March 23rd, 2014, and features a discussion of the villains of Captain America. Uh, Everyone Loves a Bad Guy is a podcast that I hosted for 3 years or so, many years ago at this point, more than I care to admit. And this one was more or less my wrap-up for a pretty epic slog I had through comic books. I'm not a big comics reader, but it was a lot of fun to have my friends on and discuss things, talk about adaptations versus source material. There was one more in the original airing after this where I looked specifically at independent comics, but for mainstream titles, this was the culmination of several episodes that looked at various comic properties. So it is being re-released here in conjunction with the release of Black Widow, which will be reviewed by myself, Mark Radulich, and Alexis Haina on Damn You Hollywood. So if you are not hip to that particular show, please give it a listen. I would deeply appreciate it. Let's pay a couple of bills real quick. Our first sponsor for this particular episode is Grammarly. For you listeners of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, whatever your show happens to be, Grammarly is offering a free download of the Grammarly software. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes, while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork to download Grammarly for free. And really, I say this a lot, it's the contextual errors that really will sink you when you're writing. You write something that you think makes sense, and then turns out not so much. Helps a lot. Our other sponsor is Amazon Music. Amazon Music is a fairly well-established service at this point. It's great. It's one of the better music streaming services, in my opinion. And they're offering you a free 30-day trial. You can you can listen to more than 70 million songs ad-free if you go to getamazonmusic.com/W2Mnetwork. That will lead you to a little survey. Please tell them we sent you. Helps a lot. Helps us, helps them, helps you. It's free music. Again, 70 million plus songs. You lose nothing. Just let them know that we sent you. Helps everyone else out a lot. All right. With that all out of the way, let me in the present thank you again for listening to me in the past, and throw it to myself back in the year 2014. So, old version of me, take it away.
When the devil is too busy and death a bit too much, they call on me by name, you see, for my special touch. To the gentlemen, I'm misfortune. To the ladies, I'm surprise. But call me by any name, anyway, it's all the same. I'm the fly in your suit, I'm the pebble in your shoe, I'm the bee beneath your bed, I'm the bump on every head, I'm the heel on which you slip, I'm the pin in every head, I'm the thorn in your side, makes you wiggle and ride. And it's so easy when you're evil. This is the life you see, the devil tips his hat to me. I do it all because I'm evil, and I do it all for free. Your tears are all the pay I'll ever need.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Everyone Loves a Bad Guy. I am your host, your resident authority on evil, Mr. Robert Winfrey, and I'd like to thank you all so much for joining me here tonight, or whatever day if you're listening to the recorded session after the fact. Still, thank you. I appreciate the listen, the download, the rating, if you choose to give one, reviews, questions, comments. I All of it. I appreciate it. You're acknowledging and validating my existence, so thank you all so very much. Tonight, we're tackling the last... I'm kind of wrapping up comic villains for the immediate future. And I hadn't done a major player yet. Well, sort of major player, I suppose. It's, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has kind of revamped things. But I hadn't yet touched on Captain America. I didn't do it and, just line up with his film coming out with The Winter Soldier. Very good movie, by the way, so if you haven't seen it, please, by all means, go do so. If you have seen it, see it again. Why not? If you got the time and the inclination. But he's the last kind of major comic book character that I want to tackle, and once we get done with him tonight, next week is going to be completely dedicated to some independent comics, independent titles, villains, Image, Dark Horse, Vertigo. So I imagine The Walking Dead and Preacher will get a fair amount of time, and that's next week. So if you want to call in tonight, since I don't have a special guest lined up, the number to do so is 323-657-0901. Once again, 323-657-0901. And unless I'm flooded, which, I'll make sure you get on the air, and we can have a few minutes to talk about Captain America and his list of villains. But since we're tackling that, I looked up his list of villains. He's not got not the deepest, but he's got a couple of great. First of all, I want to say this. Not only are there a fair number of Germans in here, which makes sense given that Captain America was created to kind of, play on World War II, so he fought the Nazis. It stands to reason there would be some Germans still harboring resentment after I know I will. That's just me. But he's got the Germans. There's a lot of barons. There's like 3 or 4 different barons. I mean, Captain America just hates, or it hates him. I mean, both are incredibly viable lines of thought. But he's like the third guy who's had a bunch of one subgenre. The Flash fought a bunch of captains. Wonder Woman fought all the doctors. And now we've got Captain America taking on all the barons. We're just working our way up the hierarchy. I imagine there's somebody here who just fights nothing but kings and the ruling class. But first one, let's go ahead and tackle the big one right off the bat. The arch enemy/nemesis of Captain America. Johann Schmidt, the Red Skull. Now, Red Skull he's another one of these villains who's a pretty big deal. I knew he was Captain America's, kind of end-all, be-all enemy. As any time you do something with Captain America, television, cinema, you've got to have the Red Skull, if at all possible. And he really messes with the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe from time to time. I mean, anytime he's got his hands on the Cosmic Cube, which is this device of power, it lets him do all kinds of fun stuff. He swaps his consciousness with that of Steve Rogers, Captain America once. He's just, he can do pretty much anything he wants. Granted, they're imperfect replicas of other Cosmic Cubes, but that's just kind of how, at least that's my limited understanding. But he gets, he does all that stuff. He was, his backstory is really interesting, and it's been fiddled with from time to time, as these things tend to be, especially when translating comics to film. Generally speaking, in film canon especially, he was experimented on as a person. He was experimented on or experimented on himself with the super soldier serum that I wound up creating Captain America. It didn't go so well. That's kind of the version we see in Captain America: The First Avenger. That Hugo Weaving portrayed, and I've got a serious kind of man crush, I suppose, or cinema crush. That's probably better. I like you. Most of the movies he's in are good. He brings a certain level of gravitas to them. He was absolutely the right choice, I think, to play the Red Skull. Though again, if you disagree, call in, let me know. I'm open to other lines of thought and opinions. But if you look at the traditional comic canon, he wasn't that. He was it gets kind of funky when you look at timelines and various writers. But he started out as just someone that Hitler. The way some of the story after his the guy had kind of a traumatic childhood. His mother died in childbirth. His father blamed him for her not being there, so he abused him, tried to kill him. Then killed himself, wound up in an orphanage. I mean, just, kind of the basic stuff, I suppose, as far as comic villains go. Bad stuff happens to you. But he wound up, kind of sympathizing with the Nazis, discovered he liked killing people a lot, like you do sometimes. And he wound up just being like a bellhop in a hotel, and Hitler was actually, serving Hitler's specific rooms. Hitler was annoyed with some of the other people he had in the room with him, other officials, higher-ups in the Nazi Party, he decided, I believe he said exactly like something, I could turn a bellhop into a better Nazi, meaning just not National Socialist, than any of you are. And he saw and looked over, and there's Johann Schmidt. And he looked at him, and because it's Hitler, and he perceives inner darkness or something, he figures out that, no, this guy's a little bit, he might be there. So he takes him under his wing, and he personally instructs him, kind of turns him into his heir apparent. And actually, the skull that he wears is a mask for a long time. It was part of a uniform designed to inspire just fear and terror. It's supposed to be like the embodiment and representation of all the, the bad things that the Nazi Party could do. The intimidation factor, while Hitler is kind of the beloved leader. Which, again, that's degrees of truth and whatnot. Hey. Who am I to judge? That's history. It is. But Hitler was by and large a popular leader for a long time, and anyway, so that was. But Red Skull had his own ambitions, his own desires. He wanted to supplant Hitler. This is one of those things that again gets kind of muddled: is his involvement with Hydra, how far into it he is, because it was actually started by another Captain America villain who I want to get to in a couple of minutes here, but. Just, kind of through the force of his personality and whatnot, he constantly, did, huge parts in the war effort. He was finally beaten by Captain America. He wound up in suspended animation as well. Experimental gases released in the bunker he was in after a bomb was dropped on him and Captain America. Wakes up and he causes all sorts of problems wherever he goes. I mean, indirectly, I believe, he was kind of responsible for the entire Civil War storyline, because he was very slowly and behind the scenes kind of gaining power and influence, and just slowly steered events and political climate and everything towards that event, which Civil War storyline ended with Captain America's death after he was assassinated by Crossbones, who was acting on behalf of the Red Skull. And he's just a big, if he shows up, he can be a pretty big deal when handled properly. I mean, he's an interesting character in the sense that he kind of abandoned the Nazi ideology, believed it to be phony, and decided that he could better exploit the American kind of goals of capitalism and self-determination. And again, he's also a character who's kind of been all over the place, again, depending on who's writing him, the medium that you're portraying him in. I mean, to anyone out there who's seen the terrible, 1990 Captain America movie, he switched from a Nazi to a Italian fascist. The less said about that movie, the better, just on the whole. But again, he's been kind of screwed with, but he's a really strong character in that he has no redeeming qualities to him. Whatever his ideology happens to be, whatever he's trying to do, he's just there to cause havoc for everyone around him. Not in a Joker or Loki kind of way. He's a lot more focused in that he has his goal, but when he shows up, he. Again, this is one of the few guys who actually succeeded. He killed Captain America. I mean, think about that for a minute. Yes, he came back because deaths in comics never last. I've got an over/under set at about 5 months for the upcoming death of Wolverine, because they've all spoiled it. Yes, Wolverine's gonna die. I'm setting the over/under 5 months, more or less, before they bring him back. So that's where I'm setting it. Again, if you want to call it, you might have a thought on that. Call in if anybody feels so inclined. But so again, Steve Rogers comes back. But again, the Red Skull is just. I mean, actually, I think in current comic chronology, he's actually a clone because the original died. But he's now merged his brain with that of Professor Xavier, which gives him somewhat unstable but incredibly powerful telepathic abilities as well. After the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline, and please, anybody out there, if you're listening to this live and I'm butchering the events, again, let me know. But after the events of the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline and Cyclops losing his mind, killing Xavier, the clone of Red Skull stole the body and grafted part of Xavier's brain onto his own, something along those lines. And so now he has, again, substantial, if somewhat unreliable, telekinetic and telepathic powers because he's got some of Professor Xavier's brain. And I mean, technically speaking, it doesn't actually work. You can't graft brain tissue onto someone else, but it's a scary thought. And he's still a big deal. He's got a very forceful personality. He runs all kinds of criminal organizations. I mean, he started he actually mentioned that he stopped thinking big. He stopped thinking on a grand scheme moving from grand scheme to grand scheme, and he just had a bunch of small criminal elements and organizations that just reported to him and paid him and had him. I mean, he's adapted very well to whatever circumstance he's placed in. I really, he's a completely irredeemable character, which if you're going to be a villain it's kind of the way to go. I mean, there's a degree of, you want a villain that's fleshed out. And having some guys that are redeemable, can make the turn, have a redemption storyline, something along that, something like that. There's value there, there's just a lot of value to having someone there who is just a bad guy, who's always going to be evil, who's always going to show up and cause problems. Doesn't matter where you see them, how you see them. If one of these guys shows up, in this case Red Skull, bad things are going to happen. He's never going to show up and ask for redemption. He's never going to try and help out your heroes. He's always there to cause problems, to further his agenda, and to make your life as miserable as possible and as short. And everybody needs one of those. Every great hero needs a villain who is just there to absolutely make their lives living hell. Everyone has one, as I've discussed frequently, over the last several weeks and I think a couple of months now, at least a month. Everyone has one who shows up and just makes your life miserable. And in the case of Captain America, you've got the Red Skull. And, really interesting character design goes along with him, too. Funny story. I mean, I believe that. So, again, feel free to fact-check me. But when the character was created, the writer or the artist needed to come up with a villain for Captain America, primary antagonist. Was eating a hot fudge sundae, and the way the fudge was melting in the ice cream, it looked a little bit like a man. And he decided. So his initial thought was, hey, we'll make a villain called Hot Fudge. Now, again, this was 60s, I think, maybe. The idea that you could have a serious villain named Hot Fudge was not as laughable as it necessarily would be to contemporary audiences. But thank heavens for the cherry on top of that sundae, because it looked like a red, like the head of this, ice cream humanoid was red, the cherry, and it looks like a red skull. So we'll go with that instead. Think about it. We came that close. If he'd eaten that cherry first, imagine where we'd be today. Funny little things that wind up making a big difference. But Red Skull, I really hope they bring him back. And I know Hugo Weaving is not necessarily jumping at the bit to play the Red Skull again. I think he's gone on record. He's not that but the way they removed him in Captain America, first Captain America movie, there's room for him to come back. It looked more like he was teleported away than he was, disintegrated and reduced to nothingness. So there's room for him to return at some point, and I really hope they do. Again, assuming if you can't get Hugo Weaving, you need someone else of his stature, and he was really just a great choice to play that character. But again, if you can get him back, you've got a window. There is a way for that character to return, and I think it would be. I hope they do. I hope they get someone who can write the correct story to bring him back properly, because the Red Skull can be a really big deal. And again, it's not like they're hurting for ideas they have like the next 3 Avengers films already planned out. And you got all that stuff. I'm just saying, if you want, he's there. It's a possibility if other things don't kind of fall into place. And I would like to see it happen because, again, part of that is I just I have good vibes towards Hugo Weaving. So if he can get work and bring back the Red Skull and have him screw with the Avengers, I'd be okay. I would absolutely be okay. There's part of me that would, I'd be okay even if he came back as like some kind of a thrall to Thanos. Maybe a little bit. Red Skull's a big deal and not necessarily, anyone's lackey. But if you wanted to, use that as kind of a way to reintroduce him, I'd be okay with that. Again, I like the character. I like having just my uncompromisingly evil villains on screen and around, because there's such purity in that. And it's something that I've been listening to a lot of, wrestling podcasts recently. Because I do this, I listen to a lot of other podcasts, get ideas, figure out how maybe I can improve it. And since some of the things I'm interested in, wrestling, movies, so I go through. I have some that I listen to, and it's been kind of brought up recently, more so than before, that you just don't have wrestling villains nowadays who are just uncompromisingly evil. You don't have guys like, if you want to go, back in the day, someone like Michael Hayes or Rowdy Roddy Piper, someone who you see them coming down the ramp and you want to stab them. I mean, a lot of different variables going on, don't get me wrong, but as a character, as a wrestling character, you don't have anyone out there right now, and don't give me Bray Wyatt. He should be. Bray Wyatt should be a great, uncompromisingly evil villain. There's just a few things that, in his presentation, especially because the audience likes to be contrary, which, I'm a bit of a contrarian myself, so I get it. But there's just, you don't have the ability nowadays to really just kind of be uncompromisingly evil and just get everyone to really hate you. Partially because so much of, the way we live, everything gets, kind of blown out of proportion and whatnot, and that's a completely different topic. I'm just lamenting the lack of uncompromisingly evil character. And some of that is because I just got back from X-Men Days of Future Past, which I enjoyed a great deal, and I imagine myself, Mark Radlich, and Pat Mullen will be putting our collective heads together some point in the upcoming week, and we will be hashing out, we'll have our discussion for that film. I know Pat's already seen it. I think Mark's out to it right now, live as I'm doing this. But again, there's no one there who's just uncompromisingly evil. Throughout the entire movie, until you get to the post-credits scene, yay for Apocalypse. Come on, please nobody out there scream at me. Everyone should have known that was coming. Bryan Singer already announced that his next X-Men movie is going to be Age of Apocalypse, so if there's going to be a post-credit scene, it's going to deal with that. I didn't tell you what it was, although I might, just because... No. But, again, you have everyone there who's not just a fully fleshed-out character, but all of them have degrees of sympathy. And you just need at least one villain who just flat-out, uncompromising, I'm evil. Whether they admit they're evil or not is a whole other story, but you need someone who is just like that, even if for no other reason than to put your, sympathetic or understandable villains into a better perspective. I don't know, they did have Richard Nixon, and I suppose if you fall into the category who demonizes everything Nixon did, then he's your villain. But I don't fall into that category. But again, different story. But, as far as, if you want to look at maybe a somewhat redeemable character, there's another one in Captain America, very specifically, Baron Zemo. There's actually two Barons. A father that I believe Captain America killed not too far into his reign, and then his son. And, for all the... Zemo's a really interesting character in that he's a scientific genius, and during World War II he develops an adhesive that cannot be dissolved. It's like the super adhesive, and Captain America has to stop him from using it on the Allied troops, because you dump this stuff, it just never comes off. There's not a solvent that'll dissolve it. You're just stuck. And logistically speaking, that could be a huge problem for Allied troops, so they dispatch Captain America. He winds up getting some of this on the guy's... And he's wearing a mask at the time, Baron Zemo is, and some of this adhesive goes onto his face, and he's got the mask permanently adhering said mask to his face. And at that point, he goes from just being somewhat evil Nazi scientist to absolutely crazy. And he, again, pursues Captain America. His son pursues him. But what I wanted to get into is his son, the second Baron Zemo. I will look it up, because I am supposed to have Helmet. That's it, Helmet. Heinrich Zemo is the first one, and his son Helmet takes up the mask and sword following that. But Helmet has this weird story arc wherein he decides that one of the best ways to make his life easier, he founds one of the groups of the Masters of Evil, and there's always one incarnation of them, and they start doing heroic things to kind of get people on their side. And people wind up, taking to them. Maybe there's a comment about people and how easily duped we are, but this group becomes heroes. They do heroic things, and their goal is, well, if we get people complacent, we can then turn on them, and we'll be, again, villain logic. But some of the other, when he tries to make this turn, when he tries to go through with his evil plot, and I forget the specifics of it, but they stop him. Because, no, we kind of like being, doing heroic. We don't feel like this is the right... I mean, everyone had different motivations, but, he wound up, I think, founding the Thunderbolt, which is I can say pseudo-heroic group. I mean, they've done a lot. There's been a lot of good solid good guys who've been in there. Hawkeye, when as a hero, has been a member. Or Mockingbird or Songbird, one of them. And he's constantly. So he's founded the Thunderbolts, and they, he's one of the founding members, I think. Something to that effect. And he starts doing some good things. He's, still a little bit still a bit arrogant, still a bit sadistic, but he's now, trying to save the world instead of subjugate it or destroy it. And the thing about it is no one trusts him. No one really believes that he's changed his ways, and he constantly has to deal with people second-guessing him. And to be fair, there's a long history of him being a bad guy. So now he's, constantly fighting to earn trust and respect. I have to imagine elements of this are kind of could be played for somewhat comedic value in that he tries so hard to do the right thing, and then no one trusts him to actually do the right thing. It seems like he really wants to, kind of turn over a new leaf and whatnot, but nobody can really trust him, and he's, I forget who it was he had a conflict with, where, they have accepted this individual. I'm going to hang it. Alrighty. Okay, well, again, he just kind of becomes self-centered. He winds up in kind of a feud with Hawkeye because Hawkeye became leader of the Thunderbolts after he kind of founded them. I'll find it eventually. I really should have written it down. I apologize in advance. If you're listening, I apologize. I should have had this all locked up beforehand. But it's, he keeps trying. And just at any moment wherein a normal hero would just be trusted to do the right thing, someone has to kind of cut him off, even if he's planning to do the right thing. And so he's kind of teetering back and forth. And again, there's a lot of some self-ego involved because he and Hawkeye aren't getting along. But if you need, as a redeemable villain, as a villain who has seen kind of the error of his ways and is maybe trying to reconcile and do some of the right things. He's kind of a good example of how to go about that. He's done some bad things, but he's not the evil Nazi scientist. This is his son that we're talking about again, the second one, Helmut. And so, again, done some things, but he's trying to reform. Nobody trusts him, and again, you can go a bunch of different directions with that afterwards. You can either they finally do trust him and know, haha, I was trying to screw you all along, or their constant mistrust and some of their actions lead him into eventually snapping and going full-blown villain. Both of which are, good story. Or he can keep struggling on the path he's on. It's not like they're doing a bad job necessarily as far as a characterization standpoint goes at the moment. But he's, it's nice to have, again, balance. And he looks more, in a lot of ways, his character is more interesting because Captain America has a couple of these guys who just are irredeemably evil. And the other Baron that I specifically wanted to touch on, in part because he's going to be in some of the upcoming films, Baron von Struck, who, if you stayed for there's two different post-credits scenes in Captain America the Winter Soldier. The first one, he's the guy with the monocle who has the Maximoff twins, Maximoff, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. He has them locked up and is the one who says, no, I don't mind that Hydra's dealings have been kind of made public. And the actor signed a multi-film deal, so he's going to be around for a little bit. And if you can't get Red Skull back, Strucker's a really solid second choice. Again, a lot of these guys were opposing Captain America during World War II, so they're German and they have Nazi ties. And actually, if you get into comic canon, Strucker is the one who actually started Hydra. Red Skull, when he could see the writing on the wall as far as Hitler's going down, he sent Strucker to one of the islands of Japan to set up a secondary power base. Strucker did it and then decided, I don't like taking orders from you. So he kind of set up Hydra, got things going there, and he's scientific genius. He's got a lot of really fun kind of ability. He has he lost an arm, I forget how. I think Captain America may have done it, but he wears calls it the Satan's Claw, and it allows him to it's, really supremely powerful, allows him to shoot lightning, a bunch of fun stuff that you get with items like that. He's also infested, or has access to, has been bonded with death spores, which they heal him, they keep him at, kind of peak physical condition despite his age, and he can release them, and they just kill things around him, death spore. Pretty simplistic, it is what it says. I'm trying to remember if he's dead right now or not. Again, death in comics, it never lasts, unless you're Uncle Ben, or the planet Krypton. Those are the only two who are like, no, you know what? I say whoever's writing Spider-Man, bring back Uncle. You know, I don't care. You know, if you get the right story, you could bring him back, and it could be pretty. I mean, we've seen characters whose deaths have been untouchable, theoretically, be brought back. Jean Grey, Bucky Barnes, who I'm actually going to get to in a little bit right here because the Winter Soldier is a pretty awesome character. But, you know, find the right story, bring back Uncle Ben, even if it's just for, like, a quick run and then he dies off again. But, you know, I say you should do it. If for no other, just because I would laugh a little bit at the reaction from people. But I'm kind of like that. Anyway, the point being, Strucker's a pretty solid choice to pick up if you couldn't bring back Red Skull for kind of the Age of Ultron, which is the upcoming Avengers movie. Again, another big deal, kind of a big wig. He's a prominent member of Cap's Rogues Gallery. He's caused more than his fair share of problems for everyone involved over his kind of illustrious career, I suppose you could call it. And since it's my show and we kind of talk about it, some glorified villains, I am going to call it that. He's had a pretty illustrious villainous career. He also constantly butts heads with Nick Fury because he completely opposed to. They met several times during World War II when Fury was a member of the Howling Commandos, and just so he's been around, and he goes off. Shield specifically will oppose him from time to time. Instead of Captain America's Shield as an entity will be opposite him. Because, again, he kind of runs Hydra. Although Hydra has, splinter cells because the Red Skull, I think, took over one of them. Somebody else had one. I forget who. Might have been Viper. Or Madam Hydra. And again, everybody has their own splinter cell as far as Hydra goes. But Strucker's kind of the big wig. So having the genius and where his character goes with once Age of Ultron kicks off, really solid choice. I mean, not the most well-known, because he hasn't had a lot of appearances outside of comics. I mean, he shows up, actually, the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Hero cartoon. He's one of the first ones, especially when they introduced Captain America. I think he's just one of the first ones, because he breaks out of the raft. That wasn't the raft. Might have been the raft. One of the super prisons. You have the raft, the cube. There's two others. I forget exactly. The raft was I don't remember exactly. So if you're listening and screaming at me, he breaks out one of the first episodes. But he hasn't, had the big, kind of appearance that a lot of other guys have. I mean, again, Red Skull is always opposite Captain America. But Strucker is a solid choice. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of where he goes because, again, villains. Yay me. Well, yay villains. I do the podcast on villains, so by extension, a little bit yay me. So that'll be a good one. That'll be good to see where things go from there. Solid choice. The actor was a good choice to play him. So, again, Strucker, solid, right behind me, Captain America villains. You have Red Skull, then you have Strucker. When you talk to people you're really into the canon, he's a solid villain, a solid choice for that. I'm kind of excited for that. Let's see how that goes. All right, the other one I wanted to touch on briefly, and this is one of my cases of there's different styles of villain from one medium to the other. In the case of scientist Arnim Zola, who appeared in both Captain America movies, actually. One of the first, if you get into comic canon, one of the first geneticists ever in human history, worked closely with the Red Skull, and he, Nazi scientist, biochemist, not just scientist, but specifically biochemist. And he has created this, is able to telepathically control anything that he's created genetically, and he creates all of these screwy things, he creates all kinds of nasty things. He also constantly brings back Red Skull. When Red Skull's in trouble, Zola's the one who bails him out. And in the comics, he's a lot less sympathetic than he kind of wound up being if you watch the movie. Well, at least the first, because some of the second one, he winds up being a little bit different. You see, there's still some of the old evil there, but he actually, hang on, look at him. All right, but what we see in Captain America: The Winter Soldier is that he has successfully downloaded his consciousness to the giant computer that Captain America and Black Widow find. And that's actually something he did in the comics as well. He developed a special body, put his consciousness into it, and he is now effectively immortal as long as he can move his consciousness. He can download it and upload it and move it around. So he's always got a body. He's never actually going to die. So, I mean, even though his, the giant, 70s computer room that housed his consciousness in the movie was destroyed, it's not out of the question for him to have moved his consciousness. So we might see him back again. Possibly, again, doors open, but he creates these really weird genetic things that he can control telepathically. Kind of the not the lackey, but the second in command of the Red Skull. There's not a rivalry which Red Skull has with both Strucker and Zemo. They constantly try to outdo each other, have the other killed. It's it's a lot of fun because anytime bad guys fight each other, there's a lot of fun to be had. But so they're constantly trying to put each other out of business, and Zola's always his firm right hand. And in the movie, it was a little different because, especially in the first one, he sees kind of the madness of Red Skull and winds up working with. He's just kind of getting away from that and some of the insanity that came along with that, and then works with the SSR and S.H.I.E.L.D. and actually, again, I'm not going to worry about spoiling some of the plot points for Captain America. So, very briefly, if you haven't seen Winter Soldier yet and you don't want to hear spoilers, here's your warning. Turns out that S.H.I.E.L.D. was actually a kind of a front for Hydra, given how many Nazi scientists and some Hydra scientists worked with them, which is based on the true story of Operation Paperclip, which the American government kind of granting amnesty and hiding certain scientists, Nazi scientists, removing them from prosecution and whatnot in exchange for scientific advances and all that fun stuff. And again, S.H.I.E.L.D. is completely infiltrated by Hydra, so he's still a bad guy, and I actually liked that as far as Winter Soldier goes, because you've got his computerized body, and he winds up letting Captain America know that that's what's going on, and his, he made a deal with the SSR in the first Captain America movie, told them what was going on, and still was kind of, still wanted to be evil enough to, not only download my consciousness into the 60s computer, huge bank of computer, again, 70s computers, had to be huge, because they hadn't shrunk the technology, built bigger walls. You had banks of memory that nowadays you could house in, one computer. I imagine that, mine, if we were to link it with the other two in the house, we could probably equal what was in that room, give or take. So, 70s technology. Feel free to laugh at it now that we're beyond it. But Zola, again, he's a great henchman to have, even if, just because he creates weird genetic things. I mean, you got to have a henchman who makes monsters. You got to need that. It's good to have around a henchman and is immortal because, again, he moves his consciousness, which has to be frustrating. I mean, you think you killed a guy and he just moves around. Ugh, so aggravating. But the other one from the latest films, the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes. The storyline that brought him back in the comic, when it was kind of revealed who he was as far as being the Winter Soldier and everything, there's, again, I mentioned earlier, there's been a few deaths in comics that have been considered untouchable, and they should have been, maybe they should be left alone, and Bucky was one of them. What was it, Bucky, Jean, Barry Allen as the Flash. He sacrificed himself in the Infinite Crisis storyline to kind of coalesce all of the continuity. Uncle Ben, again, there's a few of these that are just, nobody kind of messes with them because they're such, they're supposed to be left alone in a lot of ways, and but when they're done correctly, you get them back and you get a great story to go along with it. Jean Grey, iffy, but that's a whole other subject, whole other story. But when they brought back, Barry Allen came back as the Flash in a very well done storyline, all things considered, and Bucky coming back as the Winter Soldier was just phenomenal because they provided a realistic scenario wherein he can return, and the fact that he went from Bucky Barnes, and if you follow the comics at the time, he was a teenager. He was kind of a Robin knockoff, at least from my understanding. So again, don't shout at me, but teenager, he helped Captain America, and he went from that, and so if you're just in the comics, to being the Winter Soldier, this really kind of brainwashed, embittered assassin. They did a great job of showing the transformation from what Bucky was to where he went in the Winter Soldier. He wasn't a teenager running around with Captain America, and this for Staff Sergeant Barnes. And he wound where he was, where he started at with Bucky, Captain America's childhood friend, to long hair, a little bit of the eyeshadow. Yeah, it's all right. It's there to obscure. I don't know. Reduce glare, I suppose, is what everyone kind of says about that. But some of the eyeshadow and just coldly going about and killing whoever he's told to kill. I mean, that's what the character wound up being, and it took a lot to kind of bring him back from that press. And the actor, God, now I can't remember his name. Hang on, I will find it. And Sebastian Stan, there it is. Did a great job portraying Bucky in both roles. I mean, he was a standout from the first film, the first Captain America movie. The way that they went about creating a depth of characters in their universe, and everybody had a purpose, everybody had a chance to shine, really was just a high point of the film. And then for him to go from where he was to winding up, again, embittered, brainwashed, a really, really solid job from him, especially as someone who can go toe-to-toe with Captain America and be completely believable in beating them. As you think he could, in addition to, showing some of the confusion and complexity and the angst that goes along with recovering memories and wait, this guy's my friend. So all of that really. But the Winter Soldier, when he was just the Winter Soldier, was a real badass, really awesome. And I was very happy to see them treat that character and that whole story arc properly. I mean, it's not a one-to-one translation, but it was dealt justice, and that's kind of what I appreciate the most. All right. That's kind of the big ones, I think, at least off the top of my head and from my research. So the last couple of ones I want to talk about, let's go ahead and really briefly kind of touch on some of the... we can go down the list just a little bit. Crossbones, the mercenary, the gun that Red Skull has two kind of guys who are always with him. One of them is Arnim Zola, Science, and Crossbones, who does the heavy lifting and the shooting. He's actually the one who pulls the trigger and kills Captain America at the end of the Civil War storyline. The character is in the Winter Soldier. He's never addressed as Crossbones, though he will when he comes back, assuming he does, because they showed him still alive at the end. Played by Frank Brillo or Grillo? Now I'm going to have to look it up, but I want to say Brillo, and I'm talking about that one. But he's, again, just kind of the right-hand man for the Red Skull and all of his nefarious deeds and everything. Grillo. It is Grillo. Okay. My bad. I actually like his version. My only issue with that movie as far as his character, and I'm going to nitpick a little bit here. Again, I liked, but he went from, I was never sure to the extent that he was in on the whole Hydra thing, and they didn't make it clear enough in the movie. I mean, minor nitpicking. But I do hope they bring him back, and Frank Grillo did a really good job. Really solid job in that character. All things, again, it's a minor character, and it was written as a minor role in that movie. So but that was a good one. So it's not a little bit further down the line, but all right, we got a caller here. So area code 661. I don't recognize the number. If you are someone I know and I just haven't memorized your number, I apologize in advance. But area code 661, you're live. So what do you got? Hello. Well, that dropped. Okay, again, area code 661. If you just called in. You got dropped. I don't know if you hung up deliberately or not. If you didn't, that wasn't me. I didn't hang up on you. So if you had something you wanted to say, call back in. Hopefully we'll get that sorted out. But yeah, there's Crossbones. Again, I kind of hope they bring him back, even if he's just kind of a lackey for Strucker, or he just wants to kill Bucky Barnes for betraying the cause. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could go with it. As far as his next appearance goes, he's a solid, a little wrestling parlance, a solid upper mid-card heel that can be in the main event. He can mix it up with Steve. Not on necessarily one-to-one footing the way someone like the Winter Soldier could, or Red Skull, or some of those high-level guys, but he could be kind of believable. And the last one I wanted to touch on, because every, I try to close these by focusing on maybe some of the sillier villains. And Captain America is one who actually made an appearance in Captain America the Winter Soldier, Batroc the Leaper. George Batroc, portrayed in the movie by former UFC welterweight champion George St. Pierre, who is, if you don't know who he is from the comics, he's, again, in a pro wrestling term, he's a jobber. He's there to get beaten up. He's in great physical condition because in terms of just, unarmed combat, he's a very skilled opponent. There's one crossover event where he and Batman get into a fight, and Batman wins. But he's clearly, he took his fair share of blows, but he has this and he's kind of a joke. Again, you have your comedy jobber here, and part of that is he's French. So his accent when he speaks English is always a little bit off-kilter, and I'm not going to do it because I do a horrible French accent. I really do. It's awful. But he's always worried about he has a very strong sense of honor, and whenever his honor is offended, then he goes after whoever did it. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're paying him or not. If you offend his honor, then he will take issue. And again, he shows up in the opening kind of sequence for Captain America, for Winter Soldier, gets beaten by Cap. That's what he's there for. He's I can really annoy the wrestling community here. I suppose he's the Dolph Ziggler. He's there to take crazy bumps and to make the other guy look good. Now that I've made everyone mad at me. But that was, again, just one of the goofier ones. But on the whole, not a bad guy to everyone. So, I'm almost out of live time. So, thank you for listening live. I'm just going to kind of wrap this up because I've hit everyone that I pretty much want to hit as far as his villains go. I can do a quick check over the list that I have here and make sure that there's no one else I wanted to hit on. Talked about Hydra. Yep. All right, yeah, those are the major ones, kind of the ones I really wanted to talk about. I'm actually looking forward, I'll very briefly say this, the third Captain America movie, which I assume they're going to make, is going to wind up, I hope they wind up, bringing Bucky, it'll be getting him back kind of to the light, and we'll also have to see how it plays out after Age of Ultron and all those fun things. But I'd be interested to see, again, I think Strucker is going to make an appearance in the third Captain America movie. That's just what they've kind of been setting up. So I'll be looking forward to that one, especially if they've kind of got Crossbones set up as his right hand and, kind of his gun instead of Red Skull because Red Skull's not there. But that's... Okay, so that's going to wrap us up here. If you think if you don't like what you hear, leave me a message. I appreciate constructive criticism. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, if you want to hit me up there and say, again, if you want to say I suck, by all means, let me know. I'm open. You can follow me or just comment to me on Twitter at WinfreeMMA. That's WINFREE, my last name. It's a compound word. MMA, because that's primarily what I write about. I've been thinking of changing it to something else, simply because I do a lot of other stuff now. So, or Facebook. I don't know how many Robert Winfreys there are on Facebook, but feel free, message me, comments, criticisms. I appreciate it all. And that's gonna wrap up looking at Captain America, the last major character. I mentioned this earlier. I'll mention it again next week. Here, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern. So that might not work. Okay, there are a few scheduling things kind of up in the air right now, which is why I'm vacillating on this. There might be a week off for Everyone Loves a Bad Guy next week. If there is, don't worry, the world will keep spinning, everybody. I promise. No, if I wind up not being able to do anything next week, I'll just move my finale to the week after. So there may just be a week off. So don't. So if you listen live, there may not be. I'll have updates posted on Twitter and Facebook and whatnot once I get all the information hashed out. Either way, my next show is going to be wrapping up my look at comic villains for the immediate future. I'm a little burned out. I've been just plowing through them, and I'm going to come back to a bunch of them. There's several that I didn't get to. I just need a break, take a month or two, do some other stuff, have some fun. Not that these haven't been fun, but, difference. You got to keep things different. You need variety. It's important. All right, variety. And either way, my next show is going to be independent comics. So, Image, Vertigo, Dark Horse, any of those, it's going to be a free call-in show like this one, but I'm hoping more people will call in. And whatever you want to talk about, anybody that I haven't touched on that doesn't fall into the major categories, I would love to have everyone's input. I imagine the Governor, Negan from The Walking Dead will get some time. Pretty much everyone from Preacher will get their fair shake. And so, again, feel free, call in. We'll have fun. That'll wrap up comics for a while. Then I will be moving forward. I'm not sure where yet. I've had some requests. Jesse Starcher wanted one. I had a request about one. Mark Radlich had some requests, so I'll be taking... I always take requests, too. So, again, same information for contacting me. If you have a request, a theme, a specific villain, anything like that you would like to either me to cover, or if you're interested in being on the show, I am prepared to, potentially have guests on. I like guests, so hit me up. I'm open, and we'll hash something out. I take requests, so let me know. That'll be fun. And anyway, so that's next week or the week after. That's my next show, depending on how some of the scheduling works out. So I'll look forward to seeing you all then. As for my plugs, not this week, not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday, which is the first Tuesday in June, the 3rd. I'm back and I'm starting my final series as the special interim guest host for The Long Road to Ruin. Myself, Sean Comer, and special guest title card artist, our title card artist extraordinaire in his own right, Benjamin J. Colon, will be joining us, and we'll have 2 shows tackling the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Yeah, it's a big one, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We have a title card already. Great piece of artwork, again, from Benjamin J. Colon. So I look forward to seeing you all there. The format for that, since there's so many movies, we're reviving the Hellraiser format, because that was the first one we did it with. The first show will just be the good entries into the series. There's probably going to be 4 films that we'll discuss the first week, and being the original Nightmare on Elm Street, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and if I feel like it, again, there's a little, but I just think we can't do 4 or 5 as we're bashing on all the bad ones. There's just too much material. So if we're going to throw in one more to talk about on the good ones, it'll be just for the fun schlock that was Freddy versus Jason. And then, again, 2 weeks from then, we'll be talking about all the bad ones, and we'll lambast them, and everyone will have a good time. So look forward for that on The Long Road to Ruin. I host the 411 Ground and Pound radio show every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, also a call-in show. Myself and the 411 expert panel, Pat Mullen and Jeff Harris, we tackle the wide, wacky world of mixed martial arts. This week, we will be reviewing UFC 173, Barao versus Dillashaw, and we'll be previewing the week after that's wonky. We'll be previewing at the very least UFC Fight Night 41, Munoz versus Mousasi, live from Berlin. The reason I say might be some issues is I believe the same day we have the finale of The Ultimate Fighter Brazil 3, headlined by Stipe Miocic and Fabio Maldonado at heavyweight. Oi! All right, so I will, again, if you're a fan of that show, I'll have all the pertinence and particulars for that episode up. At the very least, we're reviewing UFC 173. Speaking of UFC 173, if you don't want to plunk down your hard-earned cash to watch UFC 173, and first of all, shame on you, because Renan Barao is the man. You should pay money just to watch that man dance. But seriously, if you don't want to pay your money to see, I have the live coverage over at 411mania.com in the MMA section. I'm debuting my new persona, my new gimmick, for when I provide live coverage. You see, over the last couple of months, there's been a trend in the world of MMA. If I cover an event, if I provide live coverage, the events suck. We have just bad fight after bad fight, a few breaks, or they're poorly paced, or there's issues. Anytime I cover an event, we got issues. The one event in the last couple of months that I have not covered was covered by Larry Zonka, who is one of the bosses at 411 Mania, and the show was pretty sweet. It's a pretty good show. He covers a show, awesome. I cover a show, I have like the voodoo curse that comes with me watching and providing coverage. So I'll have my gimmick. I'll have a few pictures that I can post along with that gimmick. I'm not going to say what they are. We'll have some surprises, but as things go from bad to worse on that night, and I'm just, at this point, since I'm covering, I just assume they will, I'll have some funny pictures to go with it. I have some Cluckies, in case Clucky, the MMA chicken judge, rears its head. I also have the cornet face, in case something absolutely bizarre goes on, like last week, when I covered Bellator's pay-per-view, and Rampage Jackson won a decision against King Mo. He lost that fight. Everyone thought he lost that fight. I didn't agree with another decision earlier, so Clucky showed up. This time around, him winning that fight, I just had the cornet face. And if you're not a fan of Botchamania, Google cornet face, and you'll understand. That's all you need. So consider that. My weekly column in the MMA zone of 411mania.com is Locked in the Guillotine. This week, I examine the importance of any draw in the sport having a great fight, and the somewhat mercurial nature of fights that fall under that category, and why Henan Barao needs one. So, give it a read. I appreciate it. Again, comments and criticism welcome. There's a comment section under my article. If you think it sucks, let me know. I appreciate it. Either way, because if everything I do is great, I never get better, because I know I'm not that great. But that's everything I have to plug. Again, make sure you check out the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. We've got a bunch of podcasts. We've got something for you, I guarantee you. Be it MMA, football, other sports. Jason Teasley does the other sports, movies with The Long Road to Ruin, and the occasional one-of podcast or movie review that we do from time to time. If you like music, particularly of the metal variety, Robert Cooper has you on the Metal Hammer of Doom. Every Tuesday that there isn't a Long Road to Ruin, you've got Coop and the Metal Hammer of Doom. I think he did Epica last time out, or that's his next one, which I enjoy. I like Epica. Symphonic power metal is one of my, personally, one of my tastes. I enjoy it. And, again, some changes coming up next couple of months. Some of the schedules shifting around. Mark Radulich is bringing back a weekly podcast focusing on kind of the random stuff that goes on during the week, called The Whiskey Rebellion. So be on the lookout for that. Since I'm not syndicated or officially affiliated with any other site, I can also go ahead and plug thecasualheroes.com, where my good buddy Pat Mullen records the championship rounds. Gavin Napier, who's been a guest on this show, also a member of the Casual Heroes, which Mark kind of hosts, contributes to every now and then. When he feels like it. But they do a bunch of professional wrestling, so check them out. They got a lot of fun stuff up there. And that's everything I have to plug. So, thank you everyone for joining me. I appreciate it, for downloading, because now we're in the overrun. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Again, I'm not sure about next week. It's next week or the week after that I'm wrapping this whole shebang up as far as comic villains go, and then we'll see from there. So, be on the lookout for specifics as far as that's concerned. Until then, remember, villains are important, because without a good villain, if you don't have the Red Skull or Baron Strucker, then Captain America's just a guy in tight. And I think we're all happier with him being an actual hero instead of just a guy in tight. All right, everybody, take care.
So say good night to the bad guy.